Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'achad b'dvarim. Okay. Yishikoyach, everyone, for joining us as we're going in. Chodesh Nisan, Nisan.
Amen.
Someone mentioned in Shabbos about Hilchas Pesach, so I just, the person's not even here, but just to remind everyone Tuesday, Wednesday night, we're going through with quite some speed Hilchas Pesach, just like we usually do. Before Purim, we went through Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Hilchas Purim, but Sunday morning, this is not what we usually do. What we do is we pick 3 shilas. I don't tell people what kind of shilas to ask me, but that's whatever comes up that week. So I pick 3 shilas, and we try to go on a little bit of the lumdus, not just the lamaisa, because that's the way we mentioned the other day about memory. There's a skula from the Vilna Gaon, a very simple skula. He says if you learn a sugya and you learn it b'hisoidiistic, if you learn the Gemara Rashi Tosis and you understand the time of the Hilchas, you won't forget it. But if you just keep on learning halachas, you'll forget it. So that's the nakuda of what we're trying to do Sunday morning, to take 3 things, but to go into the lumdus, to go the Gemara, the Rashi, Oisis Machkimas, you read it inside, what it says in Torah Shebiksav, and Torah Shebapeh, and Rashi, Tosis, the Rif, the Rosh, the Rambam, down to the Shulchan Aruch, and this way it clicks in our mind that we remember it. I want to go back to Shiloh that I said we'll explore this week, and that is people that Rahman al-Islam Navelis. So you have for a parent is Yud Beis Chodesh, and for relatives is Shloshim Yom, and there is a very stiff halacha that's a braisa in the Gemara, and it's in Eivor Abossi and also in the Yerushalmi, which you're not allowed to go lebeis simcha, and it's a very, very tough beis simcha, beis nishta. It's a very tough halacha. What are you supposed to do? People want to go to simchas, a chasna, sheva brachas, a bris, a pidyon haben, and a lachayim, or a vort, to shalom zocher, a fabrengen. So what do you do? Today I want to discuss one unbelievable kula, which is something that you can keep in mind. This is something that the Aruch HaShulchan says that he doesn't use it unless he finds a tziruf to put it with, but it's an unbelievable kula. It's an unbelievable kula that the Aruch HaShulchan says he keeps in his back pocket. So if the Aruch HaShulchan keeps it in his back pocket, if it's good for the Aruch HaShulchan, it's good for me. Okay, let's first read, before we get to this unbelievable kula, it's unbelievable chap from the Aruch HaShulchan. Let's just read. Huh? No, the Aruch HaShulchan was Rabbi Chil Michel Epstein. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Chil Michel Epstein was the Rav in Navardak. He was the Aruch HaShulchan lived about 100 years ago. So he was a big posek in Lita. Until today, the Welt uses the Mishnah Brura, but the Echte Litvakas used the Aruch HaShulchan. Aruch HaShulchan actually had one of his unbelievable places of shimush in halacha was the Tzemach Tzedek. He traveled to the Tzemach Tzedek. He was a Rav in the Lubavitcher city before he was in Navardak. Forget where. And the Chassidim said, "You're going to be our Rav, but we want you to. If you're going to be our Rav, we want you to meet our Rebbe." So he was a very humble man, and he said, "Where's your Rebbe?" They said, "Our Rebbe is in Lubavitch." He went to Lubavitch, and the Tzemach Tzedek was Makabel and Mechovet Godel. And he spent 4 weeks or 6 weeks, not a long time. His son writes in Imre Baruch, his father told him the best 6 weeks of his life was the time he spent with the Tzemach Tzedek. Anyway, so before we get to the beautiful kula from the Aruch HaShulchan, let's read the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll get to that one kula. He says like this: in Siman Shin Tzadik Aleph in Yeridea, Kol HaMeisam Nichnas L'Beis HaMishta La'achar Shloshim Yom. So after a regular avelis, a brother or sister used to wait 30 days to go to any masiba, to any party. For his parents, 12 chodesh. We won't go into what it is. We spoke about it last week. He has to pay back because they have this co-op for suppers. He has to pay back the supper, so he's allowed to pay it back. Also lekonas law ad lamed. Also ad lachar yud beis chodesh. Okay. Hagoah. This is the words of the Machaber. The Rambam says a Bachaburis mitzvah. By the way, this if we did last week, but I just want to go through quickly. And the next if we did not do last week. Bachaburis mitzvah. Kagoah masi yosam v'yisayim al Hashem shamayim. If he's marrying off a yosam v'yisayim al Hashem shamayim. By definition, if he's marrying off a yosam v'yisayim, it's l'shem shamayim because he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it l'shem shamayim. V'melo yoichel sham yizbakel l'mayisa muter la'acher lamed. He's allowed to go to that simcha after 30 days. Lamed, and within 30 days, also l'chol sudas mitzvah shebe'olam. It's also to any sudas mitzvah.
You live in state authority. Doesn't have to go to a mitzvah.
What?
You live in state authority. Doesn't have to go to a mitzvah.
No, he's talking about that. No. He's talking about that the person is doing it. He's paying for it from his pocket, not a state attorney. Okay, so the shach learns l'chumra. The toich lam, it doesn't matter the shor krevim or for anything toich lam that's also. The Noida Yehuda learns and the Rebbe Kiva Eger learns that like the Bach that if it's for shor krevim, you have to wait 7 days, and if it's for avivima, you have to wait 30 days. Aval sudas mitzvah the lesbe simcha. Any sudas mitzvah that doesn't have such a big simcha like a wedding, mutar lekonas bo you're allowed to go k'gam pidyan aben sudas bris mila. Mutar lechel shenafila tech shiva. Balavat shelo yitzim epesach beisoy. He shouldn't go out from the door of his house. It's unbelievable kula. But pashtus, it comes from the Gemara. The Gemara says that you're not allowed to go lebeisa simcha. Mashma that if you're still, according to this, if you're still in your house. Macht nicht aus. Yesh oisrim besudas bris mila. Va'aminik shel alechel b'shum suda kol yud beis chodesh. Imu chutz lebeisoi ubetoich habayis mekilim she'oichel bebeisoi besudas bris mila v'kol shkein b'shor suda she'emem simcha. Besudas nasuim yesh lahachmer kein nirali. So I'm sorry, I went a little too fast. So again, we're taking a sudas mitzvah that doesn't have simcha, and he gives an example. Pidyan aben is a bris mila. So one opinion says it's mutter. It's a technical thing. If he's an over for the first 7 days, he can't go out of his house. It's mutter. It's also the minig is an interesting like pshara. The minig is that for all yud beis chodesh in this house he's mekel only for a sudas mitzvah. But outside the house, I'm not making. Like I said before, why? It's in his house. He's not going lebeisa simcha. The lashon the Gemara is beisa simcha. I haven't seen any Meforshim say that, but that's just mistaba because that's what the Ramah says. That's the minig. So obviously, the minig that's recorded by the Ramah has to have some feet to it. So probably the minig went back to the lashon Gemara and decided beisa simcha. But it's in his house. It's not a problem. But it's mashma that in his house only if it's a sudas mitzvah.
If they have a simcha.
No. So right, that's basis. You're not allowed to. In his house, that's a minig. Okay, that's the way the minig oilam. The minig oilam because it says osir likonis. So he's not likonis. He's sitting in his own dining room. The simcha came to him. He didn't go to the simcha. It's a diuk kal shebekalim. You don't see this is not the type of diuk Rashi Tosos would make, but that's a minig. But it's recorded by the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch is saying that that's the minig.
How about the simcha doesn't have music? Doesn't make difference?
I want to talk about it maybe next week. I want to go into what Pois can talk about. Yeah, music, not music. Today I have a better kula in my hand. So v'aminik shelalechel b'shum suda kol yud beis chodesh. Imu chutz lebeisa, betech makil musheichel bebeisa besudas bris mila v'kol shkein shor suda she'emem simcha. Aval sudas nesum yesh lahachme kein nirali. Last week I mentioned that the Noida Yehuda and Rebbe Kiva Eger bring a list of simcha shel mitzvah, which are mutter, but it's not so clear. They spoke about a siyum masechta and they spoke about a bar mitzvah, but it's not so clear. Could be they're just telling you what's a sudas mitzvah. That's mutter if it's bebeisoi, but also if you're going to go in. If they didn't say clearly that they meant to be makel more than the Ramon, so it's a problem. Avol shubal brisoi moyel, if it's his simcha. Remember we spoke about the Raiva. The Raiva says that if he's masa yosam yisoyim, it becomes his simcha. So if he's the bal brisoi moyel, it's his simcha. Yilbish big the Shabbos ad la'acher mila. Umuter likonis la mila lachol shem yim la'acher lama dafal b'sheina mila bebeisoi. Again, if you'd hold like the Rebbe Kiva Eger and the Noida Yehuda would be Lachi Zayin if it's for short kroivim. Okay. Let's next if which we didn't do last week. The konis l'chuppah, to go to a chuppah, shloi b'shas achila l'shmoya brachos. If he wants to go to the chuppah just to hear the brachos, yesh matirim v'yesh oisrim eloim bechutz labayis l'shmoya brachos. You hear how stiff the mechaber is? The guy is not going to the wedding hall. He's going to the chuppah. We're talking at some places, the chuppah and the chasna are happening in the same hall. In other places, it's happening in separate places, right?
Outside.
One is outside and one is inside, whatever. So it's going back for many generations to the minig that the chuppah and the chasna are in totally two different places. So even if he's going only for the chuppah, yesh matirim and yesh oisrim, he should stand outside the place that they're making the chuppah. That's how stiff the Shulchan Aruch is. That's how machmir the Shulchan Aruch is.
He's not dealing if it's his kid getting married or.
Let's read further. Avalo yikonas labayis klal b'shosh oimdim b'mezmutei chosan v'kala. But he should never go in to the place when they're doing the simchas chosan v'kala. They're singing gramen, they're dancing and the music. No, forget about it. That he's not allowed to walk in. V'chein noigim b'ashkenaz. And b'medinas eilu. Chol ze b'bayis shoisin hachasanum v'oichlam v'shoitzin smeichim sham v'bechup v'shoitzin v'beis hakneses shemevorchim sham birchas eides v'nesuim v'ein sham simcha klal muta v'yad ha'cheshiva. So the minig Ashkenaz is that to go to the chuppah, so miyad ha'cheshiva they go v'yesh oisim ad shloishim v'chein nirali to wait till shloishim v'yesh mekem shemachmin li yisa'ev al'oimet kol yud beis chodesh chutz l'beis hakneses l'shoamoya brachas. There are those that are machmir that even for the chuppah they stand outside the basic knesses. If, for example, he's the rav that's Masad the Kiddushin, or he's one of the people that mechabed him to give a bracha under the chuppah, he could go there. Our minig is that there is shushvinim for the chosin. So the two shushvinim of the chosin are allowed to go just under the chuppah. But even that has to be after lamed in order to put on to this kula. We're looking together. That it's unbelievable stiff chumrah. The minig Ashkenaz is even worse than the halachim, which is minig Svarad. So to the chuppah, the big kula is that if he gets a bracha under the chuppah, he should shvinin only after lamed, and to the chasana to eat. So there are those that are makel can eat with the mishamshim in another room. And those say he can't even eat in the other room. He just has to go home and take a plate with him. This is very stiff. We're talking about the father and mother, the chosin and kala. We're talking about parents. This is very, very, very.
Now the chosin kala himself could be the available.
Oh, yeah.
Is that even in 30 days for a close relative and not a parent?
He doesn't deal with a situation where the chosin kala.
Right. We'll deal with it in a second.
Okay.
So the Gemara. Let's read the Gemara because today, the next week we'll wrap it up. Today I want to talk about the Aruch HaShulchan's wild card. That it's a kula that's so good that it's unbelievable. The Gemara says, he's allowed to go to the Beis HaSimcha after 30 days. So there's two opposite pshatim. Rashi says, that this kula after 30, after Yud Beis, is only l'simchas mereis. But for a chasana, you always have to wait 12 kadoshim. Meisvi, so the Gemara says Meisvi, l'simcha l'mereus, lamed yom. Either side for the simcha, which means a chasna, side for mereus is always lamed yom. Kasha is ogishlog. Other Rishonim learn like Rashi, but the opposite way. L'simcha mereus you have to wait. For chasna, you're allowed to go right away. Meisvi, l'simcha l'mereus, you lamed yom. Kasha is ogishlog. Ameimar masni hochi. Ameimar said like this. Oh, what? Shkoya. Ameimar masni hochi. Ameima said, Omar Abba Bachona, the Simchas Mereus, Mutelekonis Lialter, that if it's Simchas Mereus, which is that they made, four families made a deal that every Sunday they're having supper in each other's house. And Reuven's family is going to host supper for Sunday night, the first Sunday in the Chodesh, and Shimon's the second, Levi and Yehuda. And that's the way, Machaya, they don't have to make every Sunday they only have to make supper once, so all the four families get together, and it's a simcha. But they have to. So that's Sameim Masni Hachi. Amar Abba Bacham LaSimchas Mereis Mutal Lekonis LaAlter. It's exciting. The kids run around. They make trouble. It's good.
The third month and fourth month.
They like each other.
They like each other. Vatanya, the Simcha Shloishim L'Marei Shloishim. Again, the same B'Raisa. You always have to wait 30 days. So the Gemara says Loi Kasha Habar Yisusa Habar Parinusa. That if they already went into the deal, so this family, the Levi family, as mechuyev to pay back. It's a deal. Every Sunday we have supper together, so it's not fair. So then we're being makel even Torah Shloshim. But otherwise, to initiate the thing, you have to wait till after Shloshim. That's the Gemara. Arisus means they're in the deal. They have to pay back, just like an artist. I'm sorry. Arisusa means he's accepting right now. I'm sorry. Porinusa means koireya. It's like a chval koiv is chayiv to pay it back. Arisus is he's going into the deal right now. He's taking upon himself an achrayis. So okay. Sagt the weiter, the Beis Yosef says like this: the Over Abasi Tanya, I'll call a Mesim also Leilach LaBeis Mishtad Lamed Yom Love Vime until Yud Beis Chodesh. Elam Kein Oisel L'Shem Shemaim, unless he went from a Sibitz L'Shem Shemaim. The Rosh brings, and this is the Rosh that the Aruch HaShulchan brings. Isal Daitav, the Isa Nesuim Teich Lamed Yom Asel. He says that there's a Bryce that you're not allowed to marry. A person's not allowed to get married for 30 days. He said, I don't understand why the Bryce has to tell me that an oval is not allowed to get married for 30 days. He's not allowed to go to any simcha. Obviously, he's not allowed to get married. He's not allowed to go to Pidyon Aben. He's not allowed to go to any mesibas. Then he brings a long arichas. It's a whole page, a long goes, and at the end he says, "Rabbi Yosef Halevi Zal, Hevi Raya, the law sin ela beisa simcha sharishus." The Amrinim Mezuzahs Smachas Pedek Tes, Kol HaMeisim also Leilach LaBeis HaSimcha Shloishim Alav V'Lima Yud Beichodesh Elim Keim Mayasuda Shel Mitzvah. He had an unbelievable different girsa than we have in our Mezuzahs Smachas. Our Mezuzahs Smachas says you're not allowed to go to a Beis HaSimcha unless it's L'Shem Shemaim. That if it says L'Shem Shemaim means he's marrying off a Yosef Yisrael and no one's going to be there to marry them off. According to Rabbeinu Yosef Halevi, no, the girsa was Elim Kain Hoysasuda Mitzvah. The whole thing the Chazal said it's also to go to a simcha, a barbecue, a restaurant, a party, a dinner. But for a simcha, a chasana, a bris milah, a pidyon haben, a board, a pidyon haben. It's all good. Leave the shul dinner aside for a second. So all this is good. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So kommt sich to gain later acharonim and have to ruin things. No, I'm joking. Comes along, the base mayor comes along and he says that he couldn't have meant the Torah Shloishim. Probably Yosef Halevi meant La'ach Shloishim. The problem with his thing is that the base mayor, I don't know, must have not seen this same Rabbi Yosef Halevi is brought in the Rosh and Achoylitz in the Yavamas, and it's also brought in the Smag and in the Chuvas Maimonius that are in the end of Hilchas Avelus and the Rambam. So in the latter two places, it doesn't give you the context of the kasha of what's going on. So you could make such a mistake. But if you learn it in the Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah has a question. You're telling the Braisa says he's not allowed to get married for 30 days. He's not allowed to go to any simcha. So Rabbi Yosef Halevi answered, nah, Simcha Shemitzah, you're allowed to go. It's only that if he's the chosn, he's not allowed to get married for 30 days. No, so that was like even the kasha. So obviously, you're allowed to, from day one, go to Simcha. That's the answer. That when Chazal said it's also to go to a Simcha, they meant a party. But if it's mitzvah, you're allowed to. Chidush of the Brais is that if he's the chosn, he's not allowed to get married for 30 days. Unless there's exceptions. The Gemara says, Nachoylitz, Rabbi Yosef HaKoyen, his wife died, he had little kids. So he went to his sister in the cemetery, and he says, you're going to get married to me? So she said, yeah. So they got married right there in the cemetery. So there's a whole shakla. So that's the shakla of Ataya and the Rosh. So he said, oh, there's an exception. The guy didn't do Piri Viriba, or he has little kids now. What are you supposed to do with little kids? What are you supposed to do? Without a wife, how do you take care of little kids? So the shayla, if he only did Edison, if he did Edison and also Beila, that's the long rush. That's where the but Memoitza Davar, it's clear that Rabbi Yosef asked, but what do you mean? He's not allowed to go to any chasna anyway. The answer, no, you're allowed to go Simcha Shal Mitzvah. The whole incident is only Simcha Shal Rishus. So therefore, so I take it, this is Beis Meir, I found quotes of Marashdam, which is a Sephardi, contemporary post of Sephardi, who doesn't quote Rabbi Yosef. He said, oh, there's also a Rishon that says, all Simcha Shal Mitzvah, you're allowed to go. So obviously, the Marashdam learned the way I learned it. So this is a very important question. So I think it's clear, and so why did the Beis Meir couldn't believe it? So I think he couldn't imagine that anyone learns the Gemara different than Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi learns, what does it mean? Os likonos labeis hamishta. Mishta means a wedding. But I think that Rabbi Yosef Halevi, and by the way, with Rabbi Yosef Halevi is Rabbeinu Tam, and with Rabbeinu Tam is also Rabbeinu Yitzchak, three of the biggest Baalei Tosfos. So they have the right to learn different than Rashi. Rashi learned Beis Simcha means a wedding, and they learn, no, Beis Hamishta means a restaurant. Sudas Mereis means that it's a party in the house. Beis Hamishta means a restaurant, a dinner. But the Gemara was never talking about the chasna, a pidyon ben, a bris. They have the right to learn different than Rashi. Rabbeinu Tam, you know what? He'll put different film than Rashi. So he could learn different than Rashi. So Rashi, we're going with this, that the Rashi and the Tosfos and all the Rishonim say, that means you're not allowed to go to a wedding until 30 or 12 months. Because we're convinced because the Rashi, we're under the impression of Rashi and Tosfos. Rabbeinu Yosef, Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbeinu Yitzchak Hazaken, they must have learned the Gemara. Means a restaurant, a dinner. You have to wait 30 or 12 months, depending if it's Shokrev Maviyimah. But for Simcha Shal Mitzvah, you can do right away, no problem. Obviously, B'Tachshiv is not allowed to walk out of his house, but that's a technical problem. So that Rabbeinu Yosef is an unbelievable kula, huh?
Put on one side, and the cool
Huh?
Sounds like they put on one side and the cool on the other side. Because before, the Beis Hamishta really means a chaser. So you would say a husband is allowed to take the wife for dinner to the restaurant during the year.
No, because then it goes into Simchas Mereyes. Simchas Mereyes. No. You don't get from Rashi and Tosfos. You're not going to squeeze out any kulas. You're not going to squeeze out any kulas from Rashi and Tosfos. You're only going to get kulas if you go with Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbi Yosef Halevi, and Rabbeinu Yitzchak Hazaken. So that's emalasot. That's emalasot. What can you do? But that's the big kula. So the thing is, the Aruch HaShulchan never, when he brings it Rabbeinu Yosef Halevi, he never discusses if it's with Toich Lamed or not Toich Lamed. But it's the shaila of contemporary poskim who are discussing this, what he meant. Now I'm convinced that he meant from day one. Okay, so if I'm right, so then there's an unbelievable kula. The problem is that the Shulchan Aruch doesnn't bring it. We're Yidden, we follow the Shulchan Aruch. But then there's another thing that the Alter Rebbe brings, that if the Shulchan Aruch had a certain Rishonim that the Shulchan Aruch didn't bring, if he didn't have it, then you could say, if the Shulchan Aruch had the Veses HaFloga, for example, Alter Rebbe has a different mahalach, so because Shulchan Aruch didn't have the Ramban, the halachas Hilchas Nidal Ramban, so therefore had the Shulchan Aruch had it would have said differently. So I tried to search yesterday if the Beis Yosef and the Ramah perhaps didn't have the Rosh on Maseches Yevamos. I couldn't find, but it's interesting that in the Shulchan, if you look in the Beis Yosef, he doesn't quote. No one quotes this Rosh from Achoylets. Haloidoveru. He must have not had it. But look inside. Look in the last piece. No, but he doesn't bring it. He would have said something. Let's read inside. The last piece. The Beis Yosef says, "B'sma kosev Reb Yehuda, Reb Yosef and Pira Rabbeinu Tam, Reb Yitzchak, Haymatirim Lavel Asudas Chosen, Achim Atzasi Shekosev Reb Yosef, Bepeirik Beis Demoyet Cotton, Also Lekonas Labeis Asimcha, go and Sudas Eris in the Soim, Lechel, Beinam Chosen, Beinam Mishamsha, and Lamed Yom, Velo Velima Yud Beis Chodesh. Rinyan Aloche, Kivin Shenambam Barosh Maskim Ladea Achas, Hochen Nachtinim, Vekolshkin Reb Yosef Motzik Edivreim. The Rosh and the Ramban, there's a machloikis between the Rishonim if you can go to a wedding without eating. There are those that are machmer, those that are mekel. So the Beis Yosef says you have to be machmer. Why? Because Rabbeinu Yosef was machmer. So the Ramos says, Yesh l'tmoya, divri beis Yosef, shepasek aloch kerosh v'ramban, because of sherebi Yosef, if motza kidivreim, v'inu behepach shelo yira'osa ela likonis lechel, beinim chosan, beinim sham, shemashma, knisa levad, shori, shelo kidivri kerosh v'ramban. He said, I don't understand. Where did he see words in Rabbeinu Yosef, a chumrah? All he said that Rabbeinu Yosef was also likonis labeis simcha lechel, but to go there is mutter. So I think you understand what's going on. The Beis Yosef saw that the Beis Yosef couldn't imagine. He didn't see the Rosh Hashanah. He couldn't imagine that there's a Rishon that holds that you're allowed to go to a wedding and eat there. So he saw that there's 3 Rishonim that are mekel. And what were they mekel? They were mekel that you're allowed to go without eating. And then someone said, but he found that Rabbeinu Yosef was through one of the 3 mekilim. He himself was machmer. Maybe he was chozaboy. Maybe that was Mishnah Chroina. What was he machmer? If the mekel is you're allowed to go in and not eat. So the chumrah is you can't even go in. He couldn't think any bigger. The Ramos said, again, the Ramos didn't see the Rosh Hashanah. The Ramos said, no, maybe the mekilim said you're allowed to go and eat. The machmina said you're allowed to go and not eat. But the Beis Yosef couldn't even think of such a big kula. He never heard of such a thing. That's because he never saw these 3 Rishonim the way it's quoted in the Rosh Hashanah. He saw it the way it's quoted in the Smag and in the Agos Maimonides, which doesn't bring the whole context of it. Had the Beis Yosef seen the Rosh Hashanah, that they meant business. That when the Chazal made a Isur to go to a Simcha, they only meant to a party, to a restaurant, to a dinner. But Simcha Shel Mitzvah, there's no problem, was never part of the Gzeida. If the Beis Yosef would have known that, he would have had a different attitude. He would have said, "Oh, maybe one of the 3, Rabbeinu Yosef, maybe he was chazabay, maybe not. We don't know." And he was machmer. Well, his chumrah would have been that you can't go and eat. You can only go without eating. But it was loyal b'dait. It says sure thing. But we do know of the Rosh in Achoylitz, which is a big. The question is how to handle it. So the Aruch HaShulchan says he always uses it if he could be mitzaref to any other kula. He uses this. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan says. For example, there's a lot of examples. Yesterday we spoke last week that maybe all the other simchas besides a wedding you could be mekel. It's not clear. It doesn't look that way in the Shulchan Aruch. Another example, the Marashdam says that the Shulchan Aruch said it's also only meant for regular people, but the relatives are allowed to. It really doesn't sound that way in Shulchan Aruch. I'm sorry, but if a person wants to be mitzaref and say, we're going to use the Rosh Hashanah brings 3 big balei toisvos, and the Shulchan Aruch, it's not so clear that the other relatives. Maybe we're talking about stam people that are going to the wedding, but relatives are different. The Marashdam brings a raya to that. He says that Lagabe sukkah, all the chosen and all and all those that are invited to the chasna, we're doicha mitzvah sukkah in order for them to have. We're doicha mitzvah sukkah in order for them to have a chasana. The din is that you're allowed to have a wedding in a wedding hall on sukkahs and not go into a sukkah. Why? Because if you're going to have to make a wedding in a sukkah, it's not going to be such a nice wedding. So madach we're doicha mitzvahs sukkah deraisa hachamor. For sure, we're going to be doicha mitzvahs avelos hakal. So it's a little funny kula from the Marashdam. But if you're going to follow the logic of the Aruch HaShulchan, you could say 2 + 2 over here. You could use the kula of the Marashdam, a person who's a relative. It's very difficult. The chasnas, the people that are marrying off children. So you're going to say, according to Shulchan Aruch, they can't eat at the wedding. Can't eat at the wedding. They have to take the plate home. So if there's a rav that wants to be mekel, that for very close relatives, not only the father and the mother, but also the brothers. I know what they do. I know Lepoil, that's what they do. Again, you don't have to. Every case has to be judged different in its own merits. And the Haimish Oilam today that they make a separate room, so Chas v'Sholem to be mekel more. Every case has a little. I'm just saying that the Aruch HaShulchan has here a secret weapon. Amachaya, he found that the 3 Gedolei Balei HaTosfos that were quoted 3 times, but one of the 3 times, if you look in context, they meant what they said, and they said what they meant. that the whole Easter of going to a simcha is only if you're going to a simcha sharishus. But if you're going to a simcha shel mitzvah, no problem at all. The chatchil, it's not the pshat that it's Easter with an exemption. According to these three Balei HaTosfos, if you read it straight in the Rishon HaChoilutz, it was never Easter to begin with. It was not an Easter an exemption. The way we read it in Shulchan Aruch, when most of the Rishonim read it, is it's also to go to Beis HaSimcha and Simchas Mereis, which means you're not allowed to go to Sudas Mitzvah, you're not allowed to go to Sudas Yeshus. And there's some exemptions. According to these three Balei HaTosfos, a restaurant.
Okay.
So a dinner.
Okay.
A dinner. Not talking about a shul dinner, raising money to build a shul. No, not talking about that. But that would probably be a simcha shel mitzvah, especially if you say the Torah. Yeah, exactly. But this is these Rishonim, these three Balei HaTosfos. If you read it straight, it's not an Issur with an exemption. It's no Issur. They learn that when Chazal said you're not allowed to go to Beis HaMishta, it means you're not allowed to go to a dinner shel rishus. You're not allowed to go to a restaurant, but to Simcha Shel Mitzvah you're allowed to. The Aruch HaShulchan says that he uses it with tziruf with any other kula when he needs it. So
Two things.
yeah.
So it means that the Hakili, you could make these zero in a sukkah, you could make sugarbrot and macaroon and whatever.
We'll talk. I want to. I'll bring that next week, just because the time is short. And we'll talk about the tzirufim that there's a few notes from the Rebbe that is published in a sefer from Arav Garelik on Avelus, where you see that the Rebbe had a strong natiyah to be mekel. And I think that the Rebbe might have had this Aruch HaShulchan in mind, but like the Rebbe had a natiyah to try to be mekel for people in this generation to go to Simchas Shel Mitzvah.
Two things. One, these three Balei HaTosfos, he doesn't do if there'll be music at the simcha or not. Would that make a difference?
According to them, there's no difference, because they say the Issur never started. An exemption only happens if you have an Issur. You could say, is there this or that exemption? If there was the Chatchila never Issur, you can't talk about an exemption.
The other issue I was thinking about is Simchas Beis Shoeva, when there was a Beis Mikdash,
that would be considered
about that an Ovel can attend the Simchas Beis Shoeva, where there'll be music, there'll be dancing, it will be.
It's a good question. I would answer
That would
Mitzvah.
be a beautiful raya one way or the other.
No, it wouldn't be a beautiful raya. It wouldn't be a beautiful raya, because all Avelus is suspended in the Regel, and especially Avelus Shel Farhesya. If every Jew in Yerushalayim is going to Simchas Beis HaSheva, and one Yid is sitting at home and they're saying, Yankel, for what's Kim's nicht Simchas Beis HaSheva? Tu nicht, Anova. So that's the Ein Lecha Avelus Befarhesya B'cha Godel Mezeh. So whatever Poskim will say one way or the other is not gonna make a difference. Obviously, he's chayiv to go to Simchas Beis HaSheva. Otherwise,
that would so the Avel is allowed to go.
No, because he's not allowed to do Avelus B'Farhesya B'Chag.
So it's a different story.
Right, all his friends, and he always goes to Simchas Beis HaSheva, and now they're saying, Chaim, come with us, Simchas Beis HaSheva. He says, no, I'm not going. So that's Avelus B'Farhesya.
And one last thing, someone who's scheduled to get married and during that week he's in Shiva, the wedding gets postponed, or the wedding happens and they leave the house and the wedding would happen.
We have to put that on hold. There's a classic Gemara.
All right.
Gemara talks about if they already shechted the cow and they already at what point is considered shechted the cow? I mean, if you make reservations with the hall and you put down a down payment, I mean,
no refunds.
What's the getter, Rosa? What's the getter from optionist?
no.
What's the getter from optionist? Is Simcha Shel Mitzvah?
The option is a Simcha Shel Mitzvah. Yes. The option is a Simcha Shel Mitzvah. Okay.
Rabbi, basically, let's summarize very quick. What's the Aruch HaShulchan?
So I want to summarize one more time.
Yeah.
According to Aruch HaShulchan, most of the Rishonim learn it's also to go to Simcha Shel Mitzvah for 12 months or 30 days. Sometimes there's exemptions, and the exemptions are quite stiff. They're not so simple. According to these three Balei HaTosfos, there was never an Issur to go to Simcha Shel Mitzvah. The whole Issur for 12 months for a parent, or 30 days it was only to a restaurant, to a dinner. But if it's a Simcha Shel Mitzvah, there's no problem at all. So the Aruch HaShulchan says that he uses it as if he needs betziruf to something else, if there's already another kula to say, he uses it together. Okay.
People today holding this minute. I mean,
It depends. Every dove is judging
Yeah.
on a case to case basis. A person. The general thing is
you have to get you up.
right. So,
And the
chas v'sholem, if there's a community that already know you, they do in a certain way. Chas v'sholem to be makel more, chas v'sholem to be machmer more.
Right.
So it depends. What are the context of what's going on? To Marshall, you mentioned in Borough Park, Haimish Olam, even today, the parent it's quite stiff, but the parents will walk out of the hall and they'll eat in the other room. So someone's going to say, "I'm going to rely now on Aruch Hashum." Whatever. That's what's done. That's what's done. But I'm just bringing al Shulchan Malachim that this is what the Aruch Hashulchan had in his mind. He had a secret weapon that he was able to be makel with.
What is mincha bad by Farbrengens? Sometimes there's music. There's full asuda.
I want to tell you about it next week. There's a beautiful note from the Rebbe about that.
Well, it says if the Rebbe was giving me a frame or someone else was giving me a frame.
Right? I'm not sure.
Well, there's some frames and there are other frames.
Isaiah used to say about Farbrengen, it says in the Pasuk, somewhere in the 30s in Tehillim, Ashosas Yareisum Tzadik Ma'apol. Ashosas means matrink l'chaim. If you stop drinking l'chaim, Tzadik Ma'apol, all the thing that Tzadik did, everything that Rebbe did, you stop taking l'chaim, there's no chiddush of Farbrengens, Ashosas Yareisum Tzadik Ma'apol. Everything went to the wayside. You stop taking l'chaim, it's all over, it's all ruined. Yeah. Okay.
By the way, the restaurant is called Simcha Shus.
Simcha Sharishus is a dinner.
Or a restaurant.
A restaurant.
The other example.
Someone asked me this week if they could sell real chametz. It's not an uncommon shaila. But it's a woman that lives in this neighborhood, and her grandson became a Lubavitcher Chosid. And he's this is the second year. The second year they don't daven here. They daven in the Frankel field. But the second year that he is at Ashena Talmud Chochem, and he learns now in the Crown Heights Kollel, and he comes to his Bubby's house because there's a Hask home here, and he went with his wife to lay Megillah by night and by day, and afterwards he came to the Bubby's house. She lives right here, and she said she has a freezer full of chametz, and she doesn't know what to do because before Pesach to get rid of it. So he said, Bubby, what's the problem? We sell it. She says, no, it's not our minhag. We don't sell it. He says, I do sell it. So the Bubby couldn't believe it. And so the Bubby called me up, very choshev family dafka, and she asked me, Emes, is it true that minhag Chabad is to sell real chametz and to use it after Pesach?
The whole Yiddish world sells it.
No, but there are people. This is what I want to discuss. That they don't sell bread or pasta or anything that's chametz be'edya. They either eat it up or throw it. Alcohol. They throw out.
My family, we would
I'll tell you what.
That was the whole.
I'm not sure what these people do because I don't do that minute. I think it's a clear, and I'll tell you soon from the Shalos Tshuvos that I see, that businesses are being makel because how could you take such a loss if you're a liquor store and you're going to throw out all the chametz? You're taking an unbelievable loss. You're not going to recover from this loss. Or if you're a grocery store also, and all the chametz on the shelf, or a bakery, all the chametz that you have is worth so much that you can't take that loss. So I think the minhag is to sell it.
When you sell real chametz, you're showing that the heter mechir is real, that it's not limited to just this or that.
So I want to go first through a few of the shittas. I pulled it up from an article from Chaim Rappaport. He's a very choshev Rav in London, in Kovetz Oris Biyurim. So bottom line is like this: he brings tshuva from the Shevet HaLevi from Tzitz Eliezer. And interesting, it's interesting the way they put the shailas chochem. How could you throw out so much chametz as bal tashchis? On the other hand, the answer is simple. It's not bal tashchis. If that's your minhag, It's not bal tashchis. You're throwing it in the garbage because that's the minhag Yisrael Torah. But you see that there are poskim, for example, the Bayan Yosef, the Papa Rov, he says, Al dvar mechiras chometz and the rogel lidrish shekol bal nefesh yidish shelo yeh chometz gomer lemechira. Well, asoichirim ani mekel sheyimkuru im mechiras chometz shalem chometz gomer ki yev shebalavoch. On the other hand, Tzitz Eliezer says in a tshuva, Yadana gam betalmidei chachamim b'gedolei Torah ma'adoira koydem shemochru chometz be'ein u'b'motzoi chag ha'pesach ha'achron hoyim machabdim behem b'nei Torah shabo lechabdim ul'achlam im tzeis ha'chag. That there are those that had a minute to be makel to dafka sell, and in the Sefer Oitzim and Hogi Chabad from Rav Munshine, he writes, he brings a story from L'Shem Ha'ozen that at Tzemach Tzedek, B'Ziknusay, they used to sell real chametz to the goy, and matzah Yom Tov, he used to eat the chametz. He brings in the Shtar Mechiras Chametz the Rebbe Rashab. It was mentioned real chametz. He brings some agodas Shapesach of Tzans.
Wasn't just safer. It wasn't like that.
No, it was own chametz. It's mashma. He said there in the cellar there is so it's mashma that it's real chametz.
I had 10 years ago, but I said that there was a problem of the material, that they never fixed the oil problem, something that everybody else has a problem. So maybe in Chabad,
Okay.
because they know how to do it.
Okay, so you're saying the answer before the question. Very good. So I agree with you. And just to summarize, so Lepoil, there are those that have a minhag not to sell any chametz that is real chametz. Bread and these things they won't sell, and they'll be making for businesses to sell real chametz. But there are those that sell mamish chametz even in their house. They'll sell pasta. They'll sell real chametz. So in this, Rabbi Rappaport says that he says maybe the reason for those that sell real chametz is that there's a concept that lehoitze melibben shel tzdukim. Like. Those that think that selling chametz is like science fiction, it's a joke. It's a garnish. He brings a letter from the Rebbe. It's in beautiful Yiddish. If I frage, you ask the question, because the Rebbe said that you're not allowed to make psharas, compromises in Judaism. See, the person asked that in Judaism we find a tradition full with psharas. Selbstverständlich. It's obvious, says the Rebbe, as pshora meint wie in English compromise, das heißt machen a pshora mit Teure. Aber Prusbel und das Ähnliches, welche steht in Teure Shebekzav und Teure Shebape, was wie gesagt oben ist das alles gegeben geworden zu Moshe Missinai, ist doch das a chelik von Teure, azoi wie aseres adibris. This is very simple Yiddish, simplifying a complicated thing. The Rebbe is saying to him that the Mishtar Mechiras Chametz is not a compromise. Torah was given everything by Sinai, and every part of Torah was given by Sinai. So when we sell Chametz, that's what the Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu Sinai. So that's not called a compromise. That's called listening to what Hashem Yisbarach is telling us. Compromise means that we're taking part of what the Torah is telling us and rejecting part of it. So this is not a compromise. So Rabbi Rappaport has the notion that maybe that's why those that are noyeg to sell real chametz. But the emes is, I didn't realize that Rabbi Heller had the svara, but it's a very good svara. I think the answer, the other thing of difference of minhag is like this. The question is how you view mechiras chametz. There's two ways of looking at mechiras chametz. One is that it's a form of hefker. The Torah really said that the chametz doesn't belong to me. It's just that if I didn't take care of it before Pesach, the Torah made as if it's my chametz in order to be over b'bal yarah b'bal yamatzah. If I just declare that it's hefker, it's already not my chametz. Chametz said it's not good enough to just declare it's hefker because scared you're going to come and eat it on Pesach. So therefore, even if the mechida is not a perfect mechida, but I'm locking the closets and I'm putting a big sticker that it's sold to the guy, so it's clear that this is like really I took it out of my rishus. That's one attitude to Mechiras Chametz. There's another attitude to Mechiras Chametz, which is that this is a real sale. It's a sale, it's a deal, and it's an absolute deal. And we know that the Alter Rebbe spent a great deal of effort to come up with a formula of Mechiras Chametz in order that it should be considered a Kinyan Gomer according to all Rishonim. Alter Rebbe had several problems with the Shtori Mechiras Chametz, and he came up with a formula saying that this is a real mechira. It's not a ceremonial mechira. It's a real mechira. We're selling the chametz to the guy. It belongs to him. It's really sold. So you could say, Alashitose, those that were selling chametz in the old style of selling chametz, where there is a question that maybe not all the Rishonim would agree that it's a real sale. So it's sort of a ceremonial sale, not kashrol ceremony. But I'm showing that the chametz, I'm not interested in it. Okay, so there is a room here to be machmir and say that chametz gomur we shouldn't keep because it's not a real sale. It's just I'm demonstrating that I don't want the chametz, but real chametz it's kedai to be machmir. But if you say that you're following the Alter Rebbe, which is with the art of kabla and v'chulu, and you're doing exactly what the Alter Rebbe says to do it, so you're holding that this is a real sale. It's not a joke. It's a sale. It's sold. The ending. To the extent that the Rebbe has a whole sicha, some sefer said that if you're going to sell the chametz agoy, don't sell the kalim. If you're going to sell the kalim, you're going to have to toivel all your kalim. And then the Rebbe has a whole pilpul why. No, you could sell the kalim and you still don't have to the kalim. No. Even though there's no chametz in the kalim, the bliya and the chametz, some sefer says you're not allowed to sell it to go. You're going to have to toivel it. The Rebbe has a pilpul. Now is not the time. When we have time, we'll do it. It's a beautiful lumdus. But it's a lumdus, not a mechiras chametz. I'm a lumdus in hilchas hagolas kalim, tefillas kalim.
But you mentioned, you started off saying that the whole question was it's Bobby that called you, right? That she called, but she was doing mechiras chametz every year anyway. What was it that she's selling?
She came from a community.
Every rab
she came. Not every rab does the same mechiras chametz. First of all, not every rab does mechiras chametz. Second of all, I have a neighbor that I had for many years that came in as art of kabbalah, and he's a gabbai in a shul in the neighborhood. And Erev Pesach he came to tell his rav that he's the art of kabbalah, and
which is what does that mean?
Which I'm not going to go into right now. But if you want, Blina the next week. Different. So that Rav said he never heard about kabbalah. So help the Eibishter that I had been in a store in Judaica world that year. And I have a cousin who's a Rosh Yeshiva today in the Kfar Chabad. When he was a Talmud in Yeshiva in Torah Chatzim, he wrote a sefer. You know my cousin Yosef Yitzchak Belnov? He wrote a sefer Mechiras Chametz B'Or of Kabbalah, and they tried to get rid of the Sfonim. It's old Sfonim, so they had $1 a sefer. So I bought 3 Sfonim for $3. So I was very happy. I said, Ari, wait a minute. I went into my house. I took the sefer Mechiras Chametz B'Or of Kabbalah. I said, please bring it to your Rav. Next time I met his Rav, he was very happy. He said, Ataka, he didn't know, he never realized, Mechiras Chametz, has a mahalach. But it's, you should know, not only Lubavitcher Rabbanim are doing it, it's a minik poshet by many Rabbanim that are selling chametz.
You're selling next Sunday?
Yes, a mitzvah from next Sunday, I'm selling chametz, and it's done, Mechiras Chametz B'Or of Kabbalah, so it's a real sale, it's not a ceremonial sale, so therefore they're selling real chametz. If it's a real sale, why can't you sell real chametz? It's ashod. It's baltashkes. Okay, so I think that's the, and I'm happy to hear that the Rabbi Heller had this. I think it's a dova poshet to me that those that were selling it and they didn't think it's a mechira gemuda, so they wouldn't sell. They will be machmer. But if you think so, I found a beautiful story. It's given a groise tzaddik at geheißen a tzaddik hakoyin. It's given kiyadua. He had he's a wilder cop. He was a genius. He was like a gon otzum. And he was wild. So they say a story that it's a sefer about his Toldos HaKoyin, the Tzaddik HaKoyin. So they say that Rogachev was a very young kid, and he came to Lublin. The Rav in Lublin was that time Reb Shnei Zalman Fradkin. It was a chassid at Tzemach Tzedek, and they spoke in learning. He said, "Is there a Psalamden in Lublin?" So he said, "Oh, there's a lam in Lublin. Be careful." The Tzaddik HaKoyin. Tzaddik was then very old. He was a Rebbe. So the Rogachev went to talk to him in learning. So the Tzaddik said, Bachrul, das Shaila? He said, no, I just want to talk apilpul. So he said, trust me, when I was your age, I also like to be mispalpul. But that's not the derech and Torah and the Torah Kedosha. I want you to go to Tzaddik and take upon yourself a Rebbe. And Chalila, you should think that I'm going to be your Rebbe because I gave you this advice. So I'm not going to be your Rebbe. I want you to find a Rebbe. And you should know that this is not the way of Torah Kedosha.
And
Anyway,
what Rebbe did the Rogachover choose?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, it doesn't say
It doesn't say here. It doesned say. Lepoil, the Rogachev was very close to the Chabad Rabbeim. I don't know if you consider the Mamitz's Rebbe, but he was Kiyadua. He was the Frierdiker Rebbe was. He considered him like his Rebbe. So here they bring a story. I know my Zayda told me. He heard from a friend of his that Frierdiker Rebbe once asked him. I can't tell you the whole story, but now, if you remind me, and the Yarachava told him a story, and Frierdiker Rebbe said he doesn't want to pass on him because he was in Petersburg and Rogachev was there. So he asked if they can bring. They asked the Rogachev to come over to his house. So my Zayda said that his friend ran to the Rogachev's house, and he had just come home from Shachris. And he went and he said that the Rebbe is calling for you. So his wife said, my husband didn't eat anything, let him eat breakfast.
When he said the Nasi is good, so I have to go.
Oh, wow. Gee, very good. He stood up, he said, the Nasi Ruf, Tatav Gain, and he went. Okay, so I want to tell you, Azoy, the story with the Reb Tzadok HaKohen is beautiful. The story was that right after Pesach, he was by a bris milah. And the Bala Bris disappeared. He came back with a bottle of l'chaim, and Reb Tzadok said, "Where were you?" So he said, "I went to find a bottle of wine, that's a bottle of mashke that was produced after Pesach, that there's no shaila that it had in mechiras chometz in it." Reb Tzadok was upset. Go, boy. He said, "B'shvilisa de'rais moel mechira, and not to be over bal yemotza." And chometz ovel of a Pesach, you have to go. He said, "You wasted your time. You could. I'll drink mashke that was sold to a guy too. It makes no difference." In other words, like he got upset. If you trust to sell the chometz in order not to be over bal yemotza, so you're going to be mahada to get me after Pesach, which is Adar Rabbanon, not to eat chometz ovel of Pesach to get me a bottle that was not sold to a goy. What's the problem? If you could trust to sell it to a goy, not to everybody get on.
If here is real, then it's real.
That's what I'm saying. From the story, you see it's real. Okay, time is up. I just third shaila. I'm not going to give you a tshuva. I'm just going to throw it out there that there is a letter coming out from Aguda, and maybe next week I'll have time. I want to tell you a little bit about it, but you have to be very careful. Mezuzahs are being sold in Judaica stores. And it's been, I think, in some of the local papers published about this week, last week, the week before, that some of them are not kosher. That's the thing. This is what I realized. I had an incident this week. I bought someone 6 mezuzahs, and they're not kosher. Yes, a lot of them, they don't have the tagim on them. If they have tagim, they're missing tagim. So maybe the kosher the is what certain letters have to have crowns on them.
Okay.
And the sofer just didn't bother to put
The sofer didn't bother. And what's the worst? And then there's a small. You could watch it. There's Rabbi Reisman has a 5-minute clip you could watch, and this is Taka, the aggravating part. He shows a picture of many of these mezuzahs that he picked up in local stores in Flatbush, and Shakai on the front is written beautiful with all the tagim.
So you see.
Exactly. But when you open up inside, there's hardly any tagim. So he says, I don't understand. If the sofer thinks that you don't need to have tagim, why did he put
On the
outside? Yeah. Because he wants.
How long does it take to make tagim? Not a sofer, but like, is it such a...
So say it takes 20 minutes. Takes 20 minutes. And that's the reason why you're buying it for $80. How many middlemen already made money on this? At least 3 people made $10 to $20 on the mezuzah. So that means the original sofer made not more than $30 on this mezuzah. So how much time? Less. Oh, shikoyach. Less.
Because he has to buy the cloth in the deal.
Oh, shikoyach. Yeah, shikoyach. So he made less. So how much time a person wants to make? I don't know. He wants to make more than $1.50 an hour.
Sure.
Okay. So now you know the answer.
That's the dollar 15 hours. Who makes dollar 15 hours today?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's, so he wants
If
to
I
make,
have to make, if I have to make a tag-in for mezuzah, I have to charge $40.
okay. So now you know. So now you know. If we have time next week, we'll talk a little more. But anyway, I saw it this week. I bought some of mezuzahs, and then it turns out it was very schwache mezuzahs. They didn't have tagim and thing, and I paid for it.
Who says so? The Tagam is
And a choshev a sofer that here in Flatbush
Can
that
they be added after?
Yeah, it could be added after.
yeah,
Yeah.
mechatchila buy the one.
No, I didn't mean, no, that
No, you
not that you
can-
bought, you found out, found out afterwards that it was missing, that it had a problem. It can be
Fine.
repaired.
I'm going to try to give it back and then get better
It
ones.
doesn't
Huh?
cost.
Yeah, I'm going to hopefully I'll give it back and just get.
That's culture. The tag-in doesn't mark in. That's why they suffer. He doesn't.
I hear you.
Right. No, he doesn't care. He says, but the evidence is kosher. So what am I selling it together?
Tag-in is not marked.
And
He says it's not market, and that's what he's telling it.
there's,
But the person that's buying it, he's not telling him, oh, by the way, it's not ma'akev, it's kosher b'diavad, and that's how I'm selling it. Right, and that's what the Rabbi Reis was showing, that if the guy really said that's not ma'akev, why did the shaka on the outside, did he write nice?
That's too much.
Rabbi? Because it doesn't take him too much time.
No,
It's ma'akev.
this issue may force, there'll be an organization to give pastors on mezuzahs, just like the pastors on food.
And the costs go up.
When they-
Of course.
So what?
Yes.
So what? In Eretz Yisrael, they have the Landau many years ago made a mochen, and in Israel, there's a lot of people they won't buy mezuzahs, and they won't buy tefillin unless it has a stamp from Rav Landau, and they pay a few dollars more. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm afraid they'll,
because people trust Rav Landau because he has like a strong
I'm
handshake.
afraid people will just buy the
So Rav
stamp,
Landau
not
opened
actually
up a
do
mochen.
anything.